Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2007 French movie Frontiers, and this is directed by Xavier Gens and stars Karina Testa. When a gang of thieves flee Paris, they come across an inn on the outskirts of the city. However, this is run by neo-Nazi cannibals intent on making them their next victims. Now, Frontiers came out at a time where the big extreme French horror uprising seemed to be happening with movies like Martyrs and High Tension, and there's still a few I want to check out, but I really liked them movies, so Frontiers has been on my watch list for a while now, so I wanted to check it out. Now, I gotta say, I do like when movies follow the bad guys for once, because even though you might be invested in these characters, sometimes you don't really want them to succeed, like 90% of the movies we see. Now, movies like A Clockwork Orange, Titan, you're following these characters' journeys, but you're kind of up in the air how you feel about them. You're either going to get won over, you're going to love to hate them, or you're just not going to give a damn by the end. But I just like that little refreshing change. I gotta say, everyone in this movie just feels like the lowest of the low in human beings. There are people who we are following in this who are threatening other people, other characters in the movie, and then the dialogue they're given, they're just dropping F-bombs to each other every 2 minutes, calling each other names, and there's a lot of exposition of what they've just been up to, in this case, a robbery. And there's lots of riots going on in the middle of France here as well, where people are just being violent because they're not liking the political way the country is going. So there's all that going on in the background. And later on, we are introduced to even more vile human beings, you know, who are the forefront of the villains in this movie. So this isn't exactly your everyday Disney fairy tale. And when the inhabitants of this inn are introduced to us, they are very intimidating, and I like when horror movies make you feel uneasy, because there's just a sense of awkwardness around our main protagonist and these horrible neo-Nazis who are living in this inn. And as a viewer, you're just like, what's going to happen here? But what I thought was interesting about this movie is our protagonists aren't really fazed too much by these characters, because they meet these everyday people all the time in the life of crime they live. But us as a viewer is like, something's about to go down. As you can imagine, the movie just takes off from here with plenty of brutal gore and lots of villainous characters. Now, in terms of the gore, I do think this movie does go for it. I have seen movies that go for it a little bit more, but there's still plenty to dig your nails into here, especially if you're a horror fan. However, if you're just an average moviegoer, this might be a little bit of a tough watch. I do think one of the biggest positives for this film is the gore, because the kills get a little bit creative here. There are circular saws tearing people's limbs off, heads exploding. Someone is put in a gas chamber at one point and his skin is melting and stuff, and that was probably my favourite kill in the movie. And there's an Achilles tendon scene where someone's Achilles tendon is kind of snipped, and it made me wince a little bit there. So this movie doesn't hold back for a lower age rating, let's put it that way. And this is all enhanced even more in the third act, when the movie gets a little bit more intense. I was getting some real Evil Dead vibes here, with the blood just splattered all over people's faces. But it becomes a 100-mile-an-hour thrill ride, and horror hounds will kind of love the last 30 minutes or so of this movie, I imagine. And from what I've seen, I think the movie does get a good message across by the end of it, where it's just saying that the world we live in is a little bit too messed up. Like I mentioned earlier, there are riots going on outside of what is happening in the movie, like on the outskirts we are, but in the city, people are using anger and violence towards their government. And I feel like this movie, with the characters fighting these neo-Nazis, is a good metaphor for what is happening on a much grander scale, because the characters are in a situation, they're angry themselves, and they're fighting against people who are much more powerful than them. But as it escalates even more, it just gets worse and worse, and more bloody and violent. And I feel like that is what is going on the outside of what we're seeing here within the city as well. But I must admit, it is really hard to care about the main protagonist in this movie, the final girl, as they say, because she's 3 months pregnant in this movie, and I feel like I could have got behind her a lot more if she was looking forward to having this baby or intending to go through with this pregnancy. But she is fully wanting to abort this baby, and you know what? If you want to do that in life, that is up to you. There is no judgment here. But I feel like if she was gonna go ahead with it and looking forward to having this baby and stuff, I could have got behind her character a little bit more, because it felt like there would have been stakes there. There would have been a reason for her to get out of here, because this new life is starting. But she's fully adamant that she's not going to go through with this pregnancy anyway. So it feels like hard to care, because there's just nothing there to want her to get through the movie, because she's a bad person anyway at the start of the film. She's like a thief and stuff. So that's where your double-edged sword comes in when you're following the antagonist, the bad guys. You've got to have something there, I suppose, to where they seem a little bit redeemable. But here, there was just nothing. But there are some real fun villains in here. I mean, I feel like the movie took a lot of inspiration from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Sawyer family. There's a guy who's 20 stone walking around with a bloodstained apron on, for God's sake. But I quite enjoyed each of their personalities and watching these psychopaths go about their day. However, there's this old guy who's the head of the family, and he really took me out of the movie, unfortunately, at times, because he's just way too cartoonish and animated. He's this old guy who's got this SS uniform on, he's got this World War II pistol, he's got some cringy dialogue, and he still thinks he's living in World War II, basically. He's this extreme Nazi. But every time he spoke, every time he was on screen, it just felt so contrast to what the movie is going on. This is a movie that goes for the extremes, the serious, the pure horror, and every time this guy was on screen, it just felt like he should have been in a TV show on Cartoon Network. I mean, if you're going for the extreme shock factor, I don't think you can have too many characters in your movie like that, or any characters at all, because it just doesn't fit. Unfortunately, there are some shaky cam movements as well. I mean, this seemed to be a little bit of a thing in the mid-2000s, early 2000s more often. And I've just never been a fan of it. I've never seen the joy in that. I've never seen the effects it has. It just has never worked for me. And thankfully, there aren't too many of them moments in this movie, but there was one mainly involving a car chase where I was like, oh man, this is really an eyesore. However, I've got to say, this movie wasn't anything groundbreaking. It uses a formula that is tried a lot, but works. It's a working formula, especially if you just want to watch a simple horror movie. A bunch of characters run into some real horrendous people and have to find their way out before they are carved up. I think you've seen that movie 100 times before, especially if you're a horror fan. But I've got to admit, I did have a lot of fun with this, and the brutality and the blood does enhance it a little bit compared to your average slasher movie. I'm just going to go ahead and rate this movie now. I'm going to give Frontiers a 7 out of 10. If you want a fun-filled, gory, blood-splattered time, this one might be worth a go. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this video. What did you think of Frontiers? Have you seen it? Are you planning on seeing it? Let me know down below in the comments and I'll get back to you all, I promise. If horror is your sort of thing, please subscribe to this channel. It would really help me out. And I've got a review of High Tension down below, another French extreme horror movie, so I'll leave that in the description. So thanks so much guys, you take care, and I'll see you on the next video.